Hello, your friendly neighborhood host, JT Wheatley, back again for another episode with a History of Comic Books podcast, this time with part 2 of a history of American women in comic books. When we last left off, I started out with the introduction of the first American women female cartoonists, Neil Brinkley and Rose O'Neill, as them and many others got their start doing advertisements and drawings while moving into comic strips and cartooning, and we'll continue with that. Another notable female American cartoonist was Martha Orr, who created Apple Mary in 1932, a Depression-era strip about a street corner apple seller Mary and her big-hearted friends. After 7 years of drawing the strip, Orr had gotten married and decided to raise a family, thus she handed off the strip to Dale Connor. Connor would sign on simply as Dale, who changed the strip to Mary Worth's Family in 1938. Soon, Connor brought on writer Alan Saunders, and the two would combine their signatures to be Dale Allen for the strip. Under Alan Saunders' writing, Mary Worth was changed from a drama to a family strip, which made Dale Connor unhappy. Thus, she left the strip to team with her husband, who was also a comic book writer. Saunders found Ken Ernst to replace Connor as the artist for Mary Worth, which would become the first dramatic continuity strip by a woman. The comic strip is still published to this date, though its origins are still relatively unknown. Edwina Dunn was born in 1893 in Upper Sandusky, Ohio, and after graduating from high school, took the Landon School of Illustration and Cartooning course. After her success, Landon would promote her name as one of his graduates in advertisements. Dunn started out doing editorial cartoons for the Columbus Daily Monitor from its first edition April 7, 1915 to its last issue in 1917, notably for its promotion of women's rights. This work also was quite possibly made Dunn America's first female political cartoonist. By 1917, she was doing the page Spotlight sketches, which would have a spin-off, The Meanderings of Meanie, a semi-autobiographical strip starring a tomboy and her fluffy dog, while also continued her illustration studies at the Art Students League. In 1918, Dunn created a new strip, Captain Stubbs and Tippy, about the adventures of a young boy and his dog. Edwina Dunn reportedly loved dogs, which she would simply sign Edwina. First appearing on August 21st of 1918, the series would run for 48 years, and its last appearance on September 3rd of 1966, with Dunn's retirement, having gone through multiple name changes from Tippy and Cap Stubbs to Tippy. Dunn also created another strip, Alec the Great, starring just a dog, that ran from 1931 to 1969. A notably productive cartoonist, it was reported she could produce a full comic strip in 1 hour. Dunn would also provide covers to music albums and even produce features for the Wonder Woman comic in the 1940s. Even after her retirement in 1966, Dunn continued to make watercolor paintings and photographs and would receive the Gold Key Award from the National Cartoonist Society in 1978. Having never married, Edwina Dunn passed away on April 28, 1990, at the age of 96. Caroline M. Saxton, who signed her work C. M. Saxton, did Luke and Duke in 1934 as a first action series, a continuity strip that took place during World War I, telling the adventures of two American doughboys boys and Yvonne, a beautiful Belgian orphan they somehow acquired during their adventures. The style of the strip was like Belgian cartoonist Herd's classic Tintin adventure strip, and Caroline would sign with her initial CM to hide the fact that she was a female, particularly on an action male-oriented strip. Many female cartoonists did such a thing as the industry was still male-dominated and sadly frowned upon female cartoonists at the time. Dale Mesnick was born Dahlia Mesnick on April 11, 1906 in South Bend, Indiana. In school, Mesnick was forced to repeat both the 3rd and the 8th grade and thus didn't graduate from high school until the age of 20. She later went to college at the Ray Commercial Art School, but dropped out to start a career as a professional artist. She began working for a Chicago greeting card company and was quite successful, but quit when her boss lowered her pay following the Great Depression. In 1933, Mesnick moved to New York, where she started to work at another greeting card company for $50 a week, of which she sent $20 back home to her family in Indiana. However, when she tried to create her own comic strip, Dahlia Mesnick ran into the trouble of being a female in a male-dominated field. Thus, she admits that, like many female cartoonists, she altered her name to the more gender-neutral Dale so as not to turn off male readers and editors. She was able to sell her strip Wedgie as Dale, about a poor country girl moving to the big city to make a living, and would later create Minnie the Mermaid. Her next strip was Peg and Putty, the Struglets, about two girls struggling to make it in the big city. It would later morph into Streamline Babies, but remain the same, and would also not be picked up for publication. Finally, Dale Mesnick would create Brenda Starr, starring a redheaded, her appearance was reportedly based on the movie star Rita Hayworth, starry-eyed reporter in the 1940, with her name taken from the 1930s debutante Brenda Fraser. Mesnick was originally rejected by Captain Joseph M. Patterson of the New York Daily News and chief of the Chicago Tribune New York News Syndicate. Reportedly, it was because Patterson had tried a woman cartoonist once and wanted no more of them. Molly Slott, his assistant and later vice president, found and discarded scripts and reworked it with Mesnick, changing Brenda Starr from a bandit into a reporter. After this, Patterson grudgingly agreed to run the strip in the Syndicate as a Sunday comic, which debuted on June 30th, 1940, but flatly refused it in the New York Daily News. In fact, Brenda Starr didn't run for 2 years until after Patterson's death in 1946. All of this was done despite Mesnick being pregnant with her daughter from her first husband, in which she jokingly stated, "I would draw, throw up, draw again, and then repeat." Despite her newfound success, Mesnick was never fully accepted by her male colleagues and even resisted joining the National Cartoon Society as a result. Brenda Starr Reporter would be a strip of high adventure, with her facing off against kidnappers, jumping out of planes, and nearly freezing to death in snow-covered slopes. Soon the strip would be filled with such rich supporting characters like Flip Decker, the teenage leader of an all-blonde girl gang, to the nameless doll, a poof-haired Robin Hood. All in all, it was a unique strip, both starring and created by a woman. Mesnick identified her character so much that she dyed her hair red and even named her daughter Star. With the success of the strip, it was naturally spawned serials, comic books, and was notably one of 20 comic strips honored at U.S. postage stamps in 1995. Mesnick would eventually hand off the strip in 1980 and would continue until June 2, 2011. Reportedly, Mesnick hated the look of the character when she left, saying the succeeding artist took away her glamour. As for her creator, Dahlia Mesnick would move back to Oakland, California to be near her daughter and grandchildren, while still occasionally working on comic strips, though none with the success of Brenda Starr, such as the Perry Mason strip and Granny Glamour, which ran in the local paper. She would eventually be honored by the National Cartoon Society with the Story Comic Book Award in 1975 and later the Milton Caniff Lifetime Achievement Award in 1997. However, she would have a stroke in 1998, permanently ending her cartooning career, and would later pass away on April 5th of 2005. Sylvia Paddock Munson did Monastery of a Blue God in Adventure Comics in June of 1937, a spy story about stolen Swiss military secrets. June Tarp Mills was born on February 25, 1918 in Brooklyn, New York. She originally worked as a model to help her family and put her through school, which included the Pratt Institute in New York. Upon graduation, Mills began a career as a fashion illustrator before moving on to comic strips and books. In 1938, Tarp Mills contributed to such comic books like The Purple Zombie, Devil's Dust, and The Catman. Born June Mills, she changed her name to Tarp to disguise her gender, once again like many female cartoonists did at the time. Mills also used her other pseudonyms such as Edgar Allan Jr. and Nella. Tarp Mills did Daredevil Barry Flynn for the Amazing Mystery Funnies in 1939, which featured Joan Hart, who would be a prototype for Miss Fury. Miss Fury would be the first costume heroine in comics, first appearing in April of 1941, coming out 8 months before Wonder Woman was created by writer William Moulton Marsden and artist Harry G. Peter. Wonder Woman wouldn't be drawn by a woman for 45 years, in fact. The series started Marla Drake, a socialite who dons a skin-tight catsuit to fight crime as Miss Fury and became an instant hit with readers. With the success of Miss Fury, it wasn't long before readers found out that her creator was a woman, as newspaper articles about the strip would feature a picture of her, which bore strikingly resembled the Miss Fury's alter ego Marla Drake. Like many creators, her creation would bear a striking resemblance to her. Mills even put her cat in the strip, a white Persian named Purry Purr. Miss Fury would be a risque strip for the day, featuring women dressing in lingerie and even a bikini at one point in 1947, which prompted 37 newspapers to cancel the strip. Tarp would later change her name back to June Mills before the series ended in 1952 and continued to work in comics, such as the 7-page romance strip in Marvel Comics' Our Love Story in 1971. She would ultimately die on December 12th of 1988. On June 19th of 2019, June Tarp Mills was posthumously inducted to the Will Eisner Hall of Fame and is still remembered as the first female cartoonist to create a female superhero. Mabel Burvick went by Odin Burvick when she took over Dickie Dare from Colton Waugh in 1944, after originally being his assistant. She would also later marry him. The comic strip about a 12-year-old boy who dreamed himself into exciting adventures was originally created by Milton Caniff on July 31st, 1933, before the comic strip great went on to Terry and the Pirates and Steve Canyon. In the tradition of many artists, Mabel Burvick signed her strip merely Odin, concealing her female identity. Nesna McMean, who was born Marjorie on June 24, 1888, changed her name on the advice of numerologists. McMean attended the School of Art and Institute in Chicago and later worked at a large millinery farm, where she became a lead designer. Between 1911 to 1913, McMean went to New York, where she originally tried at being an actress before turning to commercial art, where she sold her first piece to the Boston Star in 1914. She soon became a popular illustrated and portrait artist for the depiction of all-America girls and painted every McCall's magazine cover from 1923 to 1938. During World War I, McMean made posters for the French and American governments to raise money for the Red Cross and even toured the Western Front and entertained troops in 1918. In addition, McMean would design the Betty Crocker character in 1936 for the Gold Medal Flour Company, along with providing ads for Cadillac and Lucky Strike cigarettes at $2,500 an illustration, nearly $32,000 today. McMean tried her first comic strip, Deathless Deer, which was written by Allison Patterson, making its first appearance in November of 1942. Allison Patterson was also the daughter of Joseph Patterson, who originally refused to publish Brenda's Star by Dale Mesnick. McMean died of cancer on May 12, 1949, survived by her husband and daughter. In 1984, McMean was inducted into the Society of Illustrators Hall of Fame, with one of her illustrations featured in a 20-stamp release on February of 2001. With the outbreak of World War II, many United States men enlisted or were drafted into the war, and naturally women had to take over their jobs back home. Comic books were no exception. Ramona Patternode drew the Blue Beetle, V-Man, the Green Falcon, Dr. Fung, and the Vision during the 1940s. Peggy Ziegler drew Doc Savage and the Red Dragon in 1948. Nina Albright was born on February 15, 1907 in Manhattan, New York, and she would become an artist after winning awards for the St. Nicholas magazine in 1922 and 23, later attending the Pratt Institute in 1924. Albright got her start as a comic book artist when she answered an ad by Jerry Iger, the future business partner of the legendary Will Eisner, and would later work at comic book studios like the Funnies Incorporated, L.B. Cole, and Barnard Bailey in the 1940s. During this time, she drew The Cadet, starring Kit Carter for Target Comics. While the series had a male lead and included numerous strong female characters in response to numerous letters by mostly female readers that requested such. By the 1950s, Albright worked for American Girl magazine and educational books. She passed away on February 7, 1977, at the age of 89. There would be other female heroines drawn by women as well during this time, from Yankee Girl by Ann Brewster, Blonde Bomber and the Girl Commanders by Barbara Hall in 1942, and Jill Eglin from 1942 to 45. In 1946 to 1947, Janice Valou drew Tony Gale, about a glamorous fashion model detective for Young King Cole Comics. Ann Brewster was born Shirley Schoener-Zelvick on November 20th, 1918. She originally pursued a career in fashion design, but soon became interested in comic books after attending the Cooper Union Art School. Besides working on just the Blonde Bomber, Brewster worked for numerous studios during World War II, and in 1955 was one of the artists on The Young Romance by Jack Kirby and Joe Simon, the first official romance comic. Brewster passed away on July 9, 2005, leaving behind a 40-year comic book career that stretched from the classics like Frankenstein to adventures like Sheena. Ann Brewster inked at Fiction House, working over the pencils of Robert H. Webb for classic illustrated adaptation of Frankenstein and Mr. Midshipman's Easy. Brewster also penciled for Classic Illustrated herself. This would be a trend as female artists would draw heroines with Fiction House, which was created by Jerry Iger and Will Eisner, creator of The Spirit, back in 1936, hiring the most women artists in the 1940s, some notable names being Jean Lavender and Fran Hopper, who drew the girl detective series Glory Forbes, with Hopper also doing the jungle heroine Camilla, and Lily Renee, who drew Jane Martin, who starts out as an army nurse but soon becomes an aviatrix. Other notable comics were Jumbo, Jungle, Fight, Wings, Rangers, and Planet. While women heroine in these books were often depicted wearing skirts, bathing suits, or suggestively ripped army uniforms, they still went into action, guns in hand, also